divided, right, between two people. So I think the real empowerment which we all need is to realize that we need to share these responsibilities. We women cannot be truly empowered until and unless we become an active member of workforce in Pakistan, which is another number which keeps on dropping. But the positive thing over here is that if you look at the number of women in last couple of years who, and Jahan will also like emphasize more on that, I'm sure, who have joined professional and technical field has been increasing. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. uh, the more women join the active workforce in Pakistan, the better numbers, the better indicators we will see in future. So when you talk about SDG number 5, this is what it means to me. I want to see more women being concerned about their careers, their education, their success when it comes to professional enrichment. I want more women to make their own decisions, which I feel is not going to be possible without them being financially independent.
Okay, so that's interesting. You've raised some very valid points and some food for thought as well. Obviously, there's a cultural context here. There's education, there's awareness. There's also, and I'll come back to this later on, is that one of the questions I want to just pose for all three of you is the environment in Pakistan in terms of how businesses are and the nature of the industries that are prevalent in Pakistan, the primary ones, do they create conducive environments for women to be in that workforce? So I'm thinking particularly off the top of my head, manufacturing. You know, are all factories very much predominantly male orientated? Are there any facilities that need to be adapted or adjusted to make it a conducive environment for women? Can that even happen? And is there a cost implication? So we'll come to that in a moment. Jehan, what's been your take on the SDGs generally? And I know we've had many conversations, even at the Leaders Summit last year. So it's good to see you back again as our kind of semi-resident speaker on the SDGs. What do the SDGs mean to you? I know you've been progressing many things, and we'll come to that also. What does the SDGs mean to you, and in particular this goal?
So I first of all, Zubair, thank you for having me. And I totally agree with Ayesha and Madiha on what they've said. And a lot of what they said resonates with me as well. But, you know, the SDGs, most of them apply to all of us, whether it's good health and well-being, whether it's quality education, whether it's clean water and sanitation, you know, affordable clean energy, industry innovation and infrastructure. All of these are applicable to the Pakistan context, especially because we don't have these things, right? A lot of it needs work. But SDG number 5, gender equality, is something that I think we are all very passionate about, simply because, as Madiha said, this needs to happen. If this country is to progress, if the women of this country are going to progress, we need to make sure that there are more and more women in leadership roles and in the profession, so that we can work towards making a difference to all SDGs, not just gender equality. Because when there's a woman at the helm, she cares about clean water. When there's a woman at the helm, she cares about the environment. She cares about good education for her children or healthcare. So I think, you know, SDG 5 is key, because the more women there are who are made in charge or who take charge of these things, the more difference we will see all across the board. And that's why, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the more work that we can put into this to make sure that there are more women, not only in the professions, but in politics, in every sort of sector that is possible, the more we will see change happen.
And you know, you mentioned that women are more caring. That's not to say that men aren't as caring.
No.
But rightly so, there's clearly a distinction that women have a different perspective on life. And I don't want to get into one of, you know, the semantics of it, but there's a value addition definitely that we're seeing. And that's why the UN have specified SDG 5 to be part of the 17 solutions of the world. So clearly, if a lot of data and research has been gathered and SDG 5 has been developed, then clearly there's some method to that logic, right? You
And just if
mentioned,
you note in the
yeah,
chat, Majid Aziz has just told us, which is true, that great news for us today is that Dr. Shamshad Akhtar has been appointed as chairperson of the Pakistan Stock Exchange, which is like for capital markets to be led by a woman, it's amazing.
so can we say that you heard it here first? Excellent. No, this is great progress.
It's been on WhatsApp groups, but yeah, it's good that he pointed it out.
So it's another gentle reminder to us that the world is clearly progressing. It's acknowledging and accepting that there is this balance required. I want to try and understand some of the things. So we've kind of understood, why the SDGs are important to you, for all of you, what it is that, goal 5 means to you. And clearly it's important, which is why you're here talking about it today. But how can other businesses who are listening in, or individuals like yourselves who are in their respective areas of work, how can they progress SDG 5 in their workspaces? What can they do, in your view or opinion? And this is open to any one of you to answer first, to really kind of highlight or put the spotlight on this particular goal. Obviously, all the goals are important, which is why they're there. And then obviously they're the indicators behind them as well. So it's not to say that poverty isn't important, or reducing inequalities isn't important, or climate isn't important, but how can an individual working in an organization, whether it's an SME or a multinational, shine the spotlight on gender and say, "Hame yahan pe kuch dhyan dena chahiye." We should be looking at this because everyone's talking about it, and it's not just because everyone's talking about it that we should be doing. But if we don't do it, then we won't understand what we need to do in the future. So what would be your advice? And this is open to any of you, and feel free to jump in as well.
Zubair Sahab, I'll just go ahead and point out few things I have in mind. One being that workspace has always been dominated by men, right? That's why it's also designed by men. And when it's designed by men, it has catered to how men come to work and what are the requirements. It has never been designed keeping women in mind. So, for example, 100 years ago, if you were designing workplace keeping women in mind, you would have definitely thought of what is going to happen with the children, right? So maybe there's a daycare at work. Maybe there is there's a different setup of work altogether. Now we're very fortunate that some organizations, some very good MNCs are thinking along those lines. We need to spread those messages. If a woman is coming to work, what are the main things that should be kept in mind? Should we have a daycare? Should we have flexible work timings? Should we have remote first? Other than that, if a woman is working in a factory, or if she's working at a distribution center or in a manufacturing unit, do we have separate bathrooms for both the genders? I've seen a lot of places where women are encouraged to work, but there are no separate bathrooms for them. So these things need to be thought through. The other thing is that still there are organizations which don't offer you a good time for maternity leave. Do we have, can we take a decision? Can government of Pakistan make this mandatory? I know government of Pakistan has made it mandatory of certain amount of maternity leave, but is it applicable to your manufacturing units as well? Should government of Pakistan or should your organization give you some kind of child support if you have kids? So these are some one of the main factors which is not allowing women to enter active workforce is the cultural mindset that women are primary care providers to children, right? I mean, that's also debatable, because if we are thinking about progress, if you're thinking about moving ahead, now we're not saying that women are the primary caregivers. We're saying that both the parents are caregivers, right? So, but the facility should be extended to both parents. But since in Pakistan, at the moment, cultural context still says that women are primary caregivers, should we extend those policies to women so that they don't have any hurdles of entering workforce? So these are some things which I wanted to mention. And then safety is one of the most important things. I just wanted to highlight that in Careem we wanted to make a safe and a gender balanced environment for everyone. So we did gender sensitization training for both men and women, and we made master trainers that there are certain things. I mean, there's something called casual sexism. People talk, people there are jokes, and people don't understand the casual sexism connotation behind it. So what can be said, what can be not said, all these things, I mean, they can be integrated, and these are just very low hanging fruits which any organization can inbuild in as part of their workforce, as part of their workspace and the work culture.
I would
Do
like to
you?
add here, because I'm coming from a manufacturing setup and I'm a mechanical engineer myself. And you know what? I think I would like to endorse what Madiha has just said, that workplaces are not designed thinking that it's going to be both genders, or maybe transgenders as well, because we have them in the society. So they're not gender sensitive. And still, in the company that I work for, it's paper manufacturing, and worldwide, it's a heavily male skewed industry. There are not many women in this industry, and in Pakistan, and I think everywhere in the world, factories and industry is not in the city. So, transport of women is a very, very big issue. It takes me more than 1 hour to drive to work every day. I'm fortunate that I can drive on my own, but there would be women who cannot afford their own car, so they have to take the company transport. It takes them very long to reach home. So that's a very discouraging factor. There's so many bright young engineers who graduate every year, but they kind of leak out of the pipeline along the way somewhere. And these issues, safety, security, transportation, family friendly policies, these are very important. If they're not in place, then it discourages, and it takes back the movement 100 years, I would say that. So there are a lot of practices, but I see not many policies to support those practices. So,
Jehan, I want to sort of full circle that one. So we've kind of somewhat established that from a Pakistan context, there are challenges in terms of our cultural context, the traditional workplaces, workspaces as well, and the type of industry that we're in. Obviously, we've inherited some baggage context as well from previous industrialization, as it were, as well. So clearly there needs to be some policy amendments. But does this mean, from everything that we're listening to so far, that the environment isn't quite women friendly at the moment? And I mean that in the nicest possible way. So that's not singling out any business to say, wo kaam nahi kar rahe ya unka focus nahi hai, because we know it's a challenge and it's a journey. Does this mean, in sort of taking it from your perspective, working in the startup space, does this mean there are more women in the startup ecosystem than men? And that's a result of, as we said, mainstream workplaces perhaps not being appropriate enough for women to work in. So from facilities to machine and equipment policies. आपको क्या लग रहा है कि ज़्यादा है women in your space, or is it just balanced anyway? It doesn't make any difference.
I think, Zubair, so whatever Ayesha and Madiha said is true. It's very difficult when spaces are designed primarily by men for them to even consider the other perspective. And it's not because they're trying to be nasty, it's just that they don't see it from that perspective. But the good thing is that for the last few years especially, awareness has been created. And many companies are trying to make that difference. whether it's MNCs, whether it's large tech companies, whether it's startups, what they are doing is they're saying, okay, how can we make our environment more friendly for women? So whether in the hiring process, making sure that there is an equal number of men and women on the interview team, making sure that when they interview young women, uh, they don't ask the wrong questions. Sometimes the questions that they ask put off those young women from coming into a particular organization.
So
There's also,
sorry,
yeah.
I just want to interject there because this is a very valid point you've raised. What in your mind is a valid question that should be asked? So people listening in or people that know people that work in HR can take notes straight away. कि हमें ये सवाल अब नहीं पूछना है या ये सवाल पूछना है. Do you have anything in mind?
The questions they should ask are the same type of questions they ask men about their professional capacity, about their education, not are you married? And so if you're single, what happens if you get married 6 months down the road? That's not a question that you ask. You are interviewing for a professional job. You are not interviewing and looking at people through a micro lens at their personal lives. They will figure it out. If they get married or if they have kids, they will figure it out, and they will figure it out hopefully with your HR department, who should make it possible for them to be the people they are and still be the professionals that they are as well. So those are questions that make young women uncomfortable. Also, if there are an equal number of men and women on the interview panel, these questions will not be asked. Secondly, I think many organizations, what they're doing is they're interviewing men and women and seeing, okay, who are the best people for this job? And if they are equal in terms of professionalism, in terms of capability, if there is a man and a woman who are both equally capable, they are preferring to hire the woman because they want to increase the numbers in their organizations. It's only when women are seen as role models that other women will come and join those organizations. So I think that's a good trend. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
sure.
Just what Jehan Ara was saying, that 2 years ago I was going through the turnover of my company, and it was interesting to see that the turnover of boys or men was larger than women. And there's no guarantee that a boy or a man will stay, because they migrate to Canada, Australia, or they move to a better job more quickly. Women they tend to be more loyal. If you make the environment conducive, they are more likely to stay than men.
Yes,
so, that's a valid point. And sorry, Jehan.
Yes. Thanks. Okay. So what I was saying was, so we're seeing the numbers increasing. They're still not optimal. They're still very small. They need to increase. Now, the next thing that we need to look at is how can we develop more women leaders? Because we're seeing more women at mid-management level. We're still not seeing enough of them at the top. And until we have CEOs, CFOs who are all women, will we see more women aspiring to be in those roles? So I think that is something that we need to work on as well.
So I've got two questions in response to that. One's come through on social media. So the first part of that is, you mentioned that the questions in HR or interviews need to be asked differently or slightly more sensitively, but without the connotation. But what if the majority of women, certainly it seems to be the case, the majority of HR professionals, our heads doing the interviews, are actually women, certainly in the case of, maybe countries like Pakistan. So is there something, and I don't know what the answer would be, but is there something that needs to be changed? Because there's clearly a mindset issue or a cultural deficit there. So that's just food for thought.
Yeah, there is no rule that says that women don't need to be sensitized as well. Because, it's not just men who end up asking the wrong questions. Sometimes it's women, because that's what they've seen happen during interviews. And so they feel those are the relevant questions. Sometimes it's a company. Yeah, there is a company questionnaire that they are following. So women also need to be sensitized. It's not just men. So men are not the enemy. It's just that both of them need to be sensitive to the fact that when you are hiring, you need to be sensitive to the kind of questions you're asking. You need to also sell your company, because remember, those women may be the right people for your company, but they might not join unless you make sure that they are aware that it is a safe space, they are aware that they have opportunities to grow in the company, they're aware that there's transportation provided, they're aware that they will have the kind of environment that they would like to work in. So I think all these things are important, and it's just as important when you're hiring a man. You make sure that he understands that there are potentials for growth, there's potential for travel, there's potential for opportunities that he may want. Smart for the women, think from that perspective as well.
So there's questions that came on social media. So again, to any of you, and just short answers, if you may, is that what if there are more leaders, women leaders in higher positions of authority, and there are many of them? Does that mean that it's going to be unfairly biased now with more women acting in the way that men currently do? So that's the first question. And the second one is, with all the progress that we're seeing, alhamdulillah, that's moving women forward and this whole agenda forward, and we know there's still work to do. Let me just rephrase the question. Workplaces and institutions and policymakers could do everything to make the movement move forward, but what about the husbands and the fathers at home that put limitations or restrictions on their wives and say, TK, you can have the career, but I expect blank, 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 blank. So I expect you to be home to deal with the family issues. I expect you to be at home at a certain time. I expect you can't travel to go to another country because log kya sochenge. So just for anyone, how do we deal with that?
So where uh,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to what Jehan was saying, and right now this is not the situation that you have more women in leadership. If you look at any organization, most of the organizations in Pakistan, the leadership is male dominated right now. It's not the case right now. What we're trying to achieve is a balance. We're what we're trying to end is male domination. What we're trying to say is we want this to be more equal. As far as women sitting and asking the wrong questions, I was asked this question that if you're getting married, will your in-laws allow you to work, right? I mean, forget about husband here. You're talking about in-laws, if they will allow me to work, right? So what I'm trying to say here is patriarchy is deeply rooted in the system right now. And both the genders are part of it, not just one. That's why you see a lot of social movements being very, very vocal in Pakistan to end that, because this mindset is just not part of one gender, it's part of our culture, and we need to talk about progress to remove that mindset. The other thing, when you're talking about that, if your husband asks you that you have to be coming home at the right time, and this is work time and this is off time and this is my time and this is children's time, right? This is exactly the kind of conversation which should not happen, because then we are assigning gender roles, right? I cannot ask the same question to my husband because his work is work and my work is no work. So we are trying to reach equality on both the parameters and both the genders. If you're talking about, there shouldn't be a concept of primary caregiver. Why is this? We always use this term that my husband is babysitting at house. That's not the right term. My husband is parenting, right? Because when I parent, my husband also should parent. So what we're trying to achieve is we are breaking those stereotypes, we are breaking the norms, and we are saying कि अगर ये एक गाड़ी है तो ये गाड़ी और एक सफ़र है, तो उसमें कभी कोई ड्राइव कर रहा है तो कभी कोई थक रहा है तो कभी किसी और को ड्राइव करनी है. खाना दोनों ने पकाना है. वही वाली जो बहस है ना कि we both have to like both the gender, because we're talking about progress here, right? again, the conversation goes down to the same lane, right? That if one person is just doing everything, it's not fair on that person. We're talking about empowerment, we're talking about asking to share responsibilities. When two genders together share responsibility, there will be progress, there will be better standard of living, your kids will go to a better school, you will raise them in a better way, because he will see that both the genders, there's no difference. बहुत अम्मी अब्बू दोनों काम करते हैं, दोनों घर में. वो एक बड़ा फेमस है ना कि चिड़ा लाया दाल का दाना एंड चिड़ा लाई चावल का दाना, दोनों ने मिलकर खाना पकाया और सब ने मिलकर खाया. So this is the way we need to think. अगर हम इस तरह बोल देंगे कि तुमने ये काम करना है और मैंने ये काम करना है और तुम्हारी बाउंड्रीज यहाँ पे खत्म हो जाती हैं, तो फिर प्रोग्रेस नहीं होगी, फिर सिर्फ एक जेंडर का दूसरे जेंडर पे डंडा ही होगा.
Right. Ayesha, you wanted to comment.
Yes, I wanted to say that I was reading somewhere that at the rate we are going, it will take us approximately 99.5 years to achieve gender equality.
Yeah.
So at that rate, there's nowhere near that we'll be dominating, the top positions. So I will be, endorse what Madiha just said, that, we're talking about balancing, not overriding something. An interesting thing that I want to share, that, my company's initiative, it's a future sustainability ambassadors program. So that's another way of saying for bring your child to work day. But that program is it's focused around sustainability and issues like gender equality and gender roles and stereotyping and discrimination, and all those are addressed. So we're doing a very little part here by engaging the future generation of our employees and giving them this. Another thing that what we are doing now is that we're going to the universities, and when we are talking to future or potential candidates, we are engaging their families. So what we have planned is that we will have sessions only with the men of those candidates in their families, like their fathers or their husbands or their brothers. And those sessions will be given by women from our company to tell them and educate them on what they're missing, and how we can work around that. So there are ways, but we are very far from achieving that.
And I think what you've highlighted then, and for those people listening in live right now and later as well, that this is not saying identify what your company or your organization can do right now and expect to have all of the answers. This is a journey. Ye ek safar hai. 2030 is, well, it feels like it's around the corner, but it's still, many years away. And we have a lot more to learn. We have a lot more support. Collective action is absolutely amazing. And there's no harm in saying, मुझे ये यहाँ तक पहुँचना है, but मुझे समझ नहीं है कि कौन सा रास्ता लेना. And the idea is to take support from people like yourselves, to connect with you, to listen to other people's stories, to reach out to global compact networks, and try and navigate that journey, not alone, but with support. And that's the way I think we'll make progress. I've got a couple of other questions, and then we're sort of pretty much up on our time for today, but we will have you back because I really enjoyed this session. Got a lot of insight, and we've got a lot more to talk about, especially what your organizations are doing as well. What are the things that you would want to see happen in the next 6 months to 1 year in Pakistan, first context, and then globally to advance equality in the workplace? So very simple. Yeah,
if I can add, I think we're seeing changes already. For instance, the State Bank of Pakistan coming up with this initiative called Banking on Equality. And the reason for that really is that women are treated like aliens when they go into a bank branch. If there are businesswomen, they're not treated like businesswomen. They're sort of not considered primary customers, right? So the State Bank of Pakistan has started the initiative where they will have women in almost every branch of the major banks, so that those women will be able to address women customers and treat them with the same respect and priority that is given to male business leaders, right? So I think that's a great sign And it also sends a message to the banks and to other companies and to, to people in general, that women business leaders are important, right? Another thing is, I think the balance that everybody has been talking about is extremely important and is beginning to happen. So a friend of mine here who has a business of his own, his wife is also a computer scientist and also works. They have a special child, and they have sort of managed to lead a very balanced life by making sure that they divide the work between themselves, like Madiha was suggesting. So one of them goes to pick up the children from school on one day, the other one does it on another day. Time spent with the child at home, they divide that so that the child has the attention of both parents, spending time teaching the children or going for sports events with them, all sorts of things. They have managed to balance it. So it only requires commitment and knowing that the child has two parents, not one. All right. So it's not that one of them goes to work and the other one has to stay at home and has to take care of the household. Cooking again. I mean, my own brother, he is the one who bathes his children. He is the one who cooks. And his wife says, I want to continue my education. So, I mean, it really is, you've got to decide what is important for your family to be happy and to grow. And in business places, it is important. In Unilever, way back when we were working with them as a customer, they had made sure that their daycare was available both to the men working there as well as to the women. So sometimes the men brought in their child and put him in the daycare and would go and play with them during breaks and make sure that the baby was all right. So it's not a facility available only for women. It's also available for men. So if the man has an office place which has a daycare center, maybe he's the one who takes the child to work rather than the woman. So I think multiple creative things can happen to
Do
make
you
it
think
possible.
do you think we talked about role models, touched upon it earlier, and I know we've had other sessions where we talked about the importance of role models and the ambassadors program. Do you think that it's important for men to have female role models in their lives, or certainly in the workplace? वो हो सकता है? Do you think that's culturally possible? कि आप मुझे mentor करे या मेरे जैसे कोई, is that possible? Because we see it vice versa.
Not only possible, it's happening. So in the startup ecosystem, it's definitely happening. I'm a mentor to many young men who come to me with their issues and are very happy with the direction that I give them. You don't offer solutions, you give them direction and guidance, right? So it's already happening. But yes, egos will get in the way because many men believe that, they know best. So it's a bit difficult, but it's beginning to happen, at least amongst the young people. No, let's be honest. I mean, I don't want to offend anybody, but it's true. Egos are, for a large part, responsible for things not changing.
Where I just wanted to add one thing when you said that what should be changed in 6 months to 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
If we can somehow change Pakistan's narrative, Pakistan's leadership narrative towards empowered women, right? I would love to see that change. I mean, it's very disappointing that we work so hard and then some statements come and we are on the top headlines of international newspapers about how Pakistan is thinking about women empowerment. If somehow we can have some kind of gender sensitization, because see, for women to progress, it's Pakistan's progress. It's correlated. Pakistan cannot progress without Pakistani women being progressive. Look at Bangladesh, look at Turkey, look at Indonesia, look at India, right? Women are doing far better in terms of economic independence in comparison to Pakistan. So we need that narrative that women should join active workforce for Pakistan to become successful.
Do you think then that's partly to do with, obviously we know there's policy change that needs to happen here, partly to do with our press and PR that's talking about what's happening in Pakistan? And when I look at it from a slightly wider perspective, I sit in Europe and we have relationship with our other offices in the Global Compact Network. And when we talk about what's happening in Pakistan, actually the narrative is very different. It's seen very positively. It's seen, "Acha, aap to ye bhi kar rahe, aap to ye, acha ye bhi hota hai." There are clearly some steps that are missing. But do you think that we are the problem in ourselves because we like to talk about all the negative stuff? And don't want to go down a political or sensitive route here, but हम क्या कर सकते हैं ये narrative को बेहतर करने के लिए, apart from just saying policy needs to be changed and kind of making assumptions? What can the four of us and people listening in today start doing positively to improve the narrative so that आपस में हम बेहतर बात कर रहे हैं, globally context जो बात हो रही है? Because I know certainly we've got the Leaders Summit in next month. We've already been asked to have unstoppable women come on a session and talk about the great things that's happening in Pakistan. So koi to dekh raha hai na isko bahar se, koi dekh raha hai, people are looking in, they've got the spotlight in Pakistan. I think, right, you guys have got technology, you've got attitude, you've got aptitude, you've got capability, you've got will, you've got determination, you've got resilience. Aap mein ye jazba hai, you don't need outside support anymore. What's going on? Pakistan, literally, one of our colleagues said, I'll say it in English, but it doesn't quite translate. What's in your water? Aapke pani mein kya hai? And so for me, that's exciting, right? Yeah, go on.
So Zubair, the thing is that I'm an optimist, and whenever I'm talking about Pakistan, I'm usually talking positively about Pakistan. Yeah. It's because we are talking amongst ourselves. We also don't need to close our eyes to the challenges. So I think there needs to be a balance there as well. So definitely there has been progress, and I think each of us probably have contributed to that progress. So when I hire, I have, out of 10 people that I hire, 7 or 8 of them have been women. Not because I set out to hire women, but because they were the best people for the job. Similarly, when all these women do well in their profession, then they inspire other young women to also join, right? So I think, and also we try and make these changes, whether it is the startup ecosystem, making sure that this is communicated to the young men and women. When we go to universities, as Ayesha said, we communicate there what the challenges are and what we can do to change them. And then you see change happening. But definitely, I mean, there have been great things that have happened. And I think all of us talk about them when we travel, when we communicate with people from the outside world. We definitely talk about those, but we don't close our eyes to the challenges either. Yeah.
So it goes back to my earlier point that this is clearly a journey, right? And some big, we need to work out how to navigate it. The one thing that occurs to me just from listening to what all three of you have been saying today is that perhaps when we talk about the advancement of what's happening for women globally in the context, certainly in Pakistan, you're right, Jehan, that we need to talk about the challenges so we can address them. And it might be that there are people listening that can be the champions for addressing those issues, whether it be policymakers or changes in the workplace. But one of the things that I see that perhaps is a missed opportunity is talking about the success of that relationship that Madiha was talking, about being joint primary caregivers. So we very rarely hear about the stories that are progressing the women agenda by saying that men are part of that as well, right? So in my house as well, actually it's my turn to cook tonight. And also Uzma went back to school to do further studies, and now she's working in something that we took as a decision as a family to do. So do you think that we need to talk more about the progress and I wouldn't say the success, but how families are adapting to this new way of living and working? And if we share those stories about the Miyan Bibi is tarah kar rahe, dono look after kar rahe, it's okay for certain people to travel, in-laws are okay with it, then it might make that narrative a little bit more easier to digest, and it might work towards the narrative that we want to see, rather than just talk about just the issue of women progressing, or just the issue of औरतों के साथ ये हो रहा है, या all the other things that we hear about in the media. Do you think that's something that should be discussed or talked about. Is there value in that?
I think we should, as companies, we should spread awareness in our employees, in our male employees, about gender roles and family care and all these things as well. As a responsible organization, I think the burden, the organizations should take that burden as well, because we are spreading a lot of awareness, as Madiha said, that there are lots of gender sensitization sessions happening, but this should also be part of the agenda. So maybe, and in schools as well.
Yeah. We're almost in the. Sorry, Madiha, go.
Where I just wanted to highlight one thing. I don't think it's up to us anymore, right? Every year we do hear when 8 March happens that it, like the entire month of March, we're very viral on social media with all kinds of talks and discussions happening, right? So one thing is that we're glad that those discussions are happening in Pakistan, and I don't think that we can maneuver those discussions in one way or the other. All kind of discussions will happen now, right? Like if we are part of the corporate sector, maybe our agenda should be how we can make corporate sector more conducive for women. If somebody is in development sector, she or he will talk about early marriages, or what lawmakers can do to stop that. So all these talks needs to be happening in different spheres of, of our working environment and our social infrastructure, so that progress can. I mean, we are far behind, like falling every year. This year we fell, we fell further more. So more progress needs to be done. So if we are shouting from all the corners, and in whatever way we are waging this war, right? If we are shouting, if we are doing it legally, if we are doing it quietly, everybody will have their own styles of, like what happened in America in 1960s and 70s, right? I feel that Pakistan is facing its own kind of that transformation right now. Uh, 10 years down, ago, I used to hear women were idealizing marriage. Now they're idealizing careers, money, profession. Uh, so I think as Jahan and Aisha said, that we're stepping in the right direction, but we need more acceptability. Even if that acceptability doesn't come, it will still happen. You will see Mama. 8 March every year talking about all the bold movements and everything. You will see probably less acceptability. But these things are becoming part of Pakistan. And this is something we need to be proud of, that women and men are shouting for progress. And there's no stopping to it. But it will just go further if it gets more acceptability from the government, from the policymakers.
Okay. Guys, I think that's all we have time for today. But before we go, I'd like to ask you to reflect for a moment and just share quickly with us, what does the world look like for you in 2030? So imagine, Apotre, you're waking up on the 1st of January 2030, you have a lovely coffee in your hand, aroma sure, sab cheez aapko aa rahi hai, and you look back and you think, Pishle 10 saal mein kya hua? So, Ayesha, what does your 1st of January 2030 look like for you? You're on mute.
Personally, yes, I would be achieving my dreams and making up for the time that I invested in raising my children. And yes, for gender, yeah, I would be seeing a lot of women on the top positions, because right now we are in the phase of hiring a lot of women. So I'm hoping that by 2030, all these women that we hire today will be in the top management and will be making decisions for us.
Great. Madiha, what's your 2030 look like?
So I dream and hope of a 2030 in Pakistan where I see more women in workspace. I see more women reclaiming public spaces. I want to see more women as shopkeepers, as like I just want to see more women when I go out, not just men. And I see more women being in leadership, because we've seen in 2020 that women in leadership performed a lot differently in COVID times than men. So
Yeah,
we want to see more women being head of country, head of, like, being commissioners, being in authoritative positions, and making the right decision and saving the world.
fantastic. Jehan, what's your 2030 looking like? And I know what kind of coffee you'll be drinking as well.
So I would like to see many more women innovators developing, creating, you know, products which are meant for us to make our lives easier, and in turn will make life easier for everyone else.
Yeah,
So I would like to see more women innovators, really, more than anything else. Of course, as both Madiha and Ayesha said, I would like to walk out and see more women everywhere. Right now, you don't. You run into a lot more men than you do women. So I would like to see women on bikes. I don't know if bikes will be around 10 years from now, but more women in everything. I mean, in all walks of life. But yes, more than anything, I would like to see women innovators.
Shelley, good. I think that just basically summed up is through diversity, richer ideas will come through, right? I just want to share with you one sort of parting comment that, so I have a 16-year-old daughter, as you know, Jehan, Ikra. And she said something to me about a year ago, which really kind of rocked my foundation. And it really kind of put this whole gender equality and the movement and progress of women into real context for me, both as a father, as a husband, as a son, and as a friend to many other people as well whose wives are empowered. So I'll just quote you what she said to me, and just food for thought for everyone else as well. So, Daddy, you moved me from being my prince and my hero to setting the benchmark of what other men should be like. You think you empowered and enabled me, but actually, you did something far more valuable. You listened and you gave me respect. And if a 16-year-old can be thinking like that, then I don't think we need the Disney Cinderella stories anymore. I think, that says it all. You guys have been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for being our panelists today. Thank you for your time, your insights, and allowing us to join your journey as you move towards a more resilient world. Obviously, the conversation doesn't stop here. If you guys want to share anything, please feel free to do that, and we'll post it on our networks, LinkedIn, and share the work that you're doing and obviously the progress that you're making as well. We'll be back next month for Goal 6. And obviously, we've got the Leader Summit around the corner as well. Our session is the Road to 2030 via Pakistan. Jehan, you were on last year's segment. We'll be talking follow on from that this year's summit. So look out for all the information that's coming on LinkedIn and social media and stuff, and sign up where you can. It's complimentary, I think, for Global Compact members. So again, there's a plug. If you're not a UN Global Compact member, this is the time to join perhaps, find out what's going on in that space and connect better. And please do connect with these awesome, inspirational women who are really advocating for change and doing so much for progressing, not just women, but for men as well. So thank you sincerely. And we look forward to speaking to you again, inshallah, very soon. Take care. Jazakallah.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Zubair.
Thank you for having
Thanks,
us here.
Aisha and Madiha.
Thank
See you
you.
soon. See you soon.
See you.